going to call to order the Village of Franklin Special Council Workshop Meeting, also the Village Council's organizational meeting of November 18th, 2024. Want to do an introduction of our trustees, or are we going to do, I guess we don't have a roll call.
No, we don't have roll call because this is a workshop.
So I think we'll go ahead and introduce some of our new trustees here. We have Abigail Gates, Angelina Salaka, Mike Seltzer, of course, was reelected, and David Goldberg will be sitting as our new president. If you guys wanted to take a minute to say anything, you can absolutely do that. We are recording the meeting, so that's up to you. If you'd rather use that time, maybe during the next meeting when you're sworn in, that's also available.
Yeah, I'll probably address the village in our December meeting, so I don't need anything to say.
I did just want to say one thing about the sip and stroll that's coming up, because I don't think we'll have a meeting before that. Main Street is a sip and stroll. It's December 7th this year, correct? 6th, okay. And I just want to make sure our community supports the local businesses. And the lights are already up downtown. It's a really beautiful event. A lot of specials
What time?
are going on.
It's an evening event, so what
It's
time?
an evening event, yeah,
6
sip and
o'clock?
stroll, Tangerine Wine will have drinks,
5 to 8.
5 to 8, okay. So we'll be there, hopefully we'll see you. And it's a really great evening night to support the community and meet your neighbors and patron the local businesses and vendors.
Awesome. All right, well, since this is officially a public meeting, we are going to open the floor to public comments. If anybody would like to join us. I don't think anybody has anything to say. So we'll move on to, well, we can't certify our election results. The county, Oakland County, has not certified the election yet. So hopefully by tomorrow, we will have certified election results, at which time we will then move forward with swearing in the new trustees and the new president. Since we do not have a new council, should we
I would table.
pass on? Yeah, I think we
Yes.
need to pass on that, because that's a voting
Yes, I would agree.
act. So we'll table election of the president pro tem until our December meeting. Next item is council orientation. So the staff put together a nice little packet with some introductory material, particularly for Abby and Angelina, and then whoever our new appointee is, with regard to kind of orientation as an elected official. I can say that David Solly and I both did it 2 years ago, and I found it fairly informative.
Yeah. For that training.
Like the
that MML
organization,
training.
like the introduction to being an elected official
Oh, yeah.
seminar.
Yeah, it's a great
They
program.
have a in-face one, we did the online one, although we might have COVID anyways.
Yeah.
I don't even remember, so I think everything was online, but it was very informative, and I would definitely suggest doing it. It was maybe 3-4 hours.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, and one of the things that I think was extremely helpful was their coverage of Open Meetings Act
Yep.
and the expectation. You all did a wonderful summary, but having the opportunity to kind of sit in and get MML's perspective on that
We
was
did
very
some
helpful.
role-playing stuff, if
Yeah.
I recall.
Yep.
Yeah. So definitely worth the time.
If anyone would like to sign up for the MML training, it does have a really great reputation across the state. Many municipalities push this training because it is just one of the best resources that we have in the state. To get registered for that, you need to go through the clerk. So if you'd like to register for it, please send an email to us and we will help coordinate your registration, because it will have to come from our office to get you registered for it.
And add the dates in
Do we
here.
have a ongoing training subscription with them? Like we can take trainings as frequently or infrequently as we want?
We're members of MML. Some trainings still have cost, and they're, each training and seminar that they put on is a little different. However, we are MML members, so there are a number of resources that are available to us for free.
Okay.
And if we're talking about opportunities for learning, so there's some other, and I'm thinking about planning, like there's a planners group that is part of MEDC,
Yeah,
and they have great programs that are virtual, they're an hour long.
awesome.
And it's on just, there's one coming up, for example, I think tomorrow, on Housing Trust Fund, which may not sound very interesting, except that it is something that is a priority for the state, especially in Pontiac. And, you know, there may be a reason for us to want to tap into some of that knowledge or that money down the road. So that, I think you would find those that very useful, and get yourself on mailing lists. Maybe, you know, I'm on several of them just because I've been around, but
I could probably
We can
put
maybe
together
click
a list of
Nice.
organizations you
Yeah.
might want to subscribe to. Another great planning training, just to get the background of what's involved in planning, is the Citizen Planner, and that's through Michigan State. It's a relatively low-cost program, but it is a little bit more of a time commitment. It runs for about 6 to 8 weeks. You can do it 100% virtually now and run through it on your own time, but it's going to give all of the background information that you would need to advise on planning decisions. And again, that's another one that's highly recommended from the state. But I can look at putting together just a government subscription list for our partner organizations that you might want to be a part of their mailers and be aware of what they have going on.
a great idea.
And then when you let them know, because they're automatically involved in some of them already simply by being elected.
Awesome.
All right, so the next item, you know, we've all, I think, hopefully have read through the orientation material, the overview packet, which was written by staff, which was a nice little sort of like Q&A to yourself of being an elected official, which was very helpful. The little flow chart that we have, just showing how we're a council manager or a council administrator, constructed government, how that works. Again, if anybody has questions, there's all kinds of resource material, but I think we all pretty much don't know how it works. Meg's in charge of the office. Meg and her staff run the office. We oversee the administrator. Needs 4 of the 7 of us to take any action. So that was part of what I had. You updated the packet. So one of the things that, so Dana, you have not posted anything, right?
No, I can't
Right.
until we get the election, so.
So hopefully you'll get certified. So are you planning on having us all come in once you have certified results versus waiting till before the
Correct.
December meeting?
I think it's really important that we swear in the new trustees as soon as possible, and I don't think that waiting to the
Well,
December
we have to,
meeting would
we
be-
have to, because if there's gonna be more than 10 days. then
Absolutely.
We have to accept your nomination or your
Now, what we
elect.
could do is you can come in individually, get sworn in, and then on the day of the next meeting, if you want to have family and friends, we can do another
yeah.
swearing in.
We can do a
ceremonial
ceremonial
one.
swearing in.
Yeah, so I think everybody should come in as soon as you have the elected results, obviously within 10 days, and accept your nomination, get sworn in,
Yeah.
or your,
So as soon as I get word that they're certified, I will reach out individually and schedule times with you. It's very quick to swear you in. I'll need about 20 minutes of your time, if that, and we'll get you in and out. And then at our December meeting, we'll do a ceremonial swearing in where you can invite friends and family and give you an opportunity to speak as well.
And take pictures.
And take pictures and do that. But, yeah, so as early as tomorrow, I could be contacting to set up times, and then really as soon as possible, if we can get you in and get you sworn in, that would be great.
The office is closed for Thanksgiving and the day
Correct,
after,
yeah,
so it
yeah.
really has to
So
be.
let me just say, for those who work Wednesday, I'm here late because we have a planning I'll be here after 5 if that would work for you guys.
Wednesday. Okay, yeah, hopefully it gets certified tomorrow, and then everybody can come in Wednesday and just be done with it.
Correct.
Yep, that would be ideal. Thank you.
Okay? No problem.
So am I understanding this correctly, we have not been certified yet?
That is
Nope.
correct.
All right, so you'll be in touch with me specifically
Yes.
to do this, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, where is it in our packet? The role of the liaison. So again, I hope everyone had a chance to read through that. That was put together by Pam and Meg and Dana and Susan, and kind of nice, really a nice, really concise statement as to what a liaison's role is, most particularly that the role of the liaison is not to be an eighth person on the committee,
Yes.
but to truly liaison and be there to answer questions for the committee, the body, the commission, whoever it is that has questions about what council was thinking on something. And then the reverse is for that liaison to be able to report back to us what's going on, particularly if like for planning, the chair's not here, or even to supplement that. And trying to seem like a lot of our, I won't say a lot of our, we've had some liaisonship that was evolving more into participation as opposed to oversight. And I think that we should try and get back to oversight and let the bodies do what they're supposed to do. But I think the more important thing is, especially when I go back and watch some of our commission's meetings, they have questions about what did council mean? What was council saying? What was council's intent? That's the true place where the liaison steps in and says, here's where we're coming from. And if the liaison isn't sure where the answer to the question, at least the question can get bottled and then brought back to the council and then answered and then brought back to the commission. And then that commission can just table the matter or pass on the matter versus flailing around for a half hour trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing, which seems to just be an excessive waste of time. And I would really love to see that be eliminated. So.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think the liaison role is incredibly critical for allowing the other boards and commissions to function properly. Because while they may tune in and out to council meetings, they don't have the same perspective that you all have sitting here on council. And they need you to be there to share that perspective without interfering with their ability to use their processes to make decisions. But I think of it a lot like super glue. It's the super glue between the other committee and the village council is you as the liaison. So very critical role, even though you're not voting necessarily. You're the communicator between the two parties.
Maybe a suggestion. I was just thinking, this is about what the role is, but, you know, something that I found really helpful, remember that the commissions that you're liaising with don't know about your job, your role. So I think it would be a really good idea when you go in to get on their agenda or speak during public comments. They always do that. And introduce yourself and talk about what you're there for, and then ask them, well, how can I best serve you? And start a conversation about that. Because they're confused, I guarantee it. And they want to serve the council. They really, really do. They just need to be channeled sometimes.
So the MML training, the available dates are listed in sort of this little seminar thing in the back. Again, some of it is a little
The
for,
virtual one next
yeah, some of it's for a
tomorrow.
little higher, yeah, it's a little we call it next level training, but this introduction, the newly elected officials training, yeah, the ones that's on the 21st and the 12th. And it looks like, yeah, the November and February ones are virtual. Lansing's kind of a hike. Farmington Hills, if you really wanted to go in person, but the virtual that we did seemed to be
Yeah.
sufficient, and you can do it from home. So, yeah, get in touch with Meg or Dana if you want to sign up for one of those.
David, I think Rick has something.
We're going to go back to the official list. Go ahead, what's up? Come on up.
On the official list, you indicate that Teresa Natsky as official, an appointed official for the library. She's not a city official, she's a library
That's what I was gonna.
hire. And also, the library terms are not right, I can give you those later. Yeah. Yeah.
See, did I see anything on there? Everything looked pretty updated. I mean, obviously, the committees weren't. And you're elected to the village council, you're gonna need another trustee line,
Yep.
2026, because that'll be my seat.
And then can we offer the commissioners the same training through MML? It's training that has to do with their appointment or their, whether it be planning or ZBA?
MML doesn't do individual planning and ZBA trainings, but we could find
Okay.
some maybe.
We do have, we offer training for planning and ZBA
Okay.
through the, Michigan, planning.
Association, yeah.
Okay, because I think. that would be good.
But not through MML. MML is focused on more of the government structure at the top. But we do offer, like Dana said, other trainings for planning and ZBA, commission members.
For the fact that, Sarah did, she just recently did some training.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of continuous education and professional development, so I think it's important to keep everyone's skills sharp through training, especially if we have access to it or we're members. We can leverage those opportunities and resources.
And every time I come across something that I think is important or something that they may want in training, I include that in their package so they are aware. Just like if something comes through my desk, or you guys, I'll let you guys know this as well as too.
Yeah, thank you.
What were you thinking for code of conduct? Yeah.
I just wanted to put it on the agenda. So most councils and municipalities, a council will adopt a code of conduct. I haven't seen one that we've had here in Franklin in the past. I would like to draft a couple of maybe possibilities for council and bring them at a later date. And of course, it would be up to you guys if that was something you're interested in adopting or not. I do think that it is a pretty standard organizational policy for a council. But it, again, would be completely up to you what you would want it to look like and say, and I could come forth with some suggestions and we could work on it from there. If you don't think it's necessary, we can continue without one. I just, when was putting together the orientation, was surprised that we didn't have a council code of conduct, and would be willing to give you a couple of different drafts maybe at our next meeting if it was something we wanted to adopt. I just wanted to have an open conversation about that.
So you're talking about a code of conduct of
Yep.
how we operate and conduct ourselves inside our meetings. This isn't how we operate in the world.
Correct, it's inside of meetings, and a lot of it is not reinventing the wheel. You know, some of these things are gonna be laid out in charter, right? But it's just another location where we talk about, you know, acting appropriately and ethically, treating each other with respect. The absences are always put in a code of conduct. You know, it's more just a council policy for how you're going to conduct your meetings. Again, entirely up to you. They're just pretty standard to see, and I haven't seen one in Franklin, and I think that it could be a helpful tool to have. It gives you something to point back to when things get a little wonky on council and not everybody's agreeing or we're having a difficult situation. We've then laid out a standard for how we're going to operate and we have some teeth to step back on. But again, they're entirely set by you, and so it's how we would choose to use it, and that's just a suggestion. I just happen to notice we don't have one, and it's not my place to just tell you to have one, so I just wanted to open a conversation and get your thoughts on it.
I'm not opposed to it by any stretch. I mean, I hope we will all operate with respect to one another and respect each other's opinions. That's what they are, is opinions. So I'm hoping in general we'll conduct ourselves accordingly. So, but as far as just some general little one-pager to fall back on, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I can say that when I prefer in my meetings, like the last couple years, well, there's two types of motions. There's motions for items that are already determined to be on the agenda that we're taking action for. And then there's other times just motions that a council person can raise. I personally, when we have something that's on the agenda that we're discussing, new and old business, I personally prefer to get the discussing part first and then the motion part. The last couple of years, we've been coming out with a motion right out of the gate and then a discussion on that motion, but I prefer to have the discussion before anybody's decided what the motion is. If you've already decided the motion before we've started our discussion, then sort of
Closed-minded. It like
defeats
appears
the
that you're
purpose of
closed-minded.
what we're getting at. So when we have items on the agenda for any particular item, whatever, cell tower ordinance, when that item comes on the agenda, I don't want the first item to be somebody's motion to approve or somebody's motion to disapprove. I'd prefer to hear from everybody. Let's get all the dialogue out there, and then after we've heard from somebody, if people want to make motions, fine. But I prefer operating that way. Other than that,
I have another suggestion. So I've noticed that, would be a council decision, of course, but in a lot of councils, in order to mitigate like talking at the table and talking over each other and being more respectful, they wait for the president to call on you to speak. And that is easier for us to keep a record because then we have one voice at one time. So it would be up to David then to say, yes, Abby, or if you had something to say, you would raise your hand.
I can tell you categorically that's how it's going to happen. So,
That would be
I
something.
mean, that's how I ran my planning commission meetings.
I will bow to the wishes of the president. I'm generally the one who makes the motion, because I have a tendency to want to help move the meeting along. Now, that's because we've had a president who ran a very, very slow meeting. I think that you'll be much more aggressive in getting through our agenda. But if you would wish that I not make that first motion to approve and then have the discussion, then I will follow your directive.
I generally prefer it that way.
Another spot that I would look at, so that would be something that I would write into this code of conduct. I
And
think
then-
the way that we speak from the table should be something we write into the code of conduct.
And then when we begin discussions on matters, I would prefer to have myself, I'm a pretty open-minded person. I'll make sure that, it's not always starting at the first person, and not always starting at that person. People that aren't getting an opportunity to speak a lot is probably the first person I'll go to in certain matters to make sure we're hearing from them. So I just generally prefer that our meetings operate that way. Again, our meetings the last couple of years were just free-for-alls. We were all just opening our mouths whenever it was, and then talking over each other. I'm not a big fan of that. And another thing I'm gonna be a stickler about is I'm not gonna have people talking from the crowd.
Okay, that was
I
my
mean,
next.
if you don't
point.
walk up to that podium, announce your name, you don't have to have your street address, your street you live on would be great. If you just want to do the name that you're a resident of Franklin, if you're not comfortable, that's fine, but interactions with the crowd is not going to happen. It messes up the recordings, it messes up Dana. So I can assure you, if people start talking from the crowd, they're not going to be recognized, and they're going to be cut off pretty quickly.
I definitely appreciate that. When I was looking at the way that public comment is going, is there's a lot of back and forth there. And public comment is not designed to be a back and forth conversation. The residents all get their equal allotted amount of time to speak. We as council, you as council would not respond directly right away. When public comment is finished, then you all have the opportunity to comment on anything you'd like to from the bench, but the public does not have an opportunity to comment back to you. Now, there's always going to, you know, a lot of times there will be follow-up, and that'll be my responsibility and their responsibility to get in touch and to help answer questions like that. But having the back and forth shouting that I've seen from people sitting in the chairs here makes it really hard for us to have an accurate record when we go back and look at the minutes. And it also isn't equitable when we allow one person to go over on their public comment and talk back and forth and then don't afford that to another person. Typically, public comment is just that. You have an opportunity to comment. Council has an opportunity to comment. If a back and forth conversation is needed, then it's up to me to make arrangements to get that information where it needs to go after the meeting. And I would like to see public comment be framed a little bit more, because it just makes it difficult when we're going back on the record, looking at minutes, watching meetings to figure out exactly what was happening when we're not kind of following that order.
It also undermines staff.
It absolutely does.
So that's another thing I want to acknowledge, is the fact that if we're engaging in that type of a dialogue, they think that they have an immediate direction to us to then direct the staff, and that really needs to come from you, Meg, down to the staff, so.
I really agree with that.
Can I talk?
Agree, and I also think that villagers should have 1 2-minute opportunity and not be able to return multiple times to follow up.
Yes, that's quite standard, is that you get your one allotted time to use during public comment. So we have a public comment time set at 2 minutes. Is that what we would like to keep moving forward in this next year?
We have used 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to move it up to 4 if we could, or more than 2, just from being in the public, by the time you say your name, and then a few minutes to kind of gather your thoughts, because not everyone's good at public speaking. I think 3 minutes. I think 3 minutes
We've used
is a
3
good.
minutes. I always thought 2 minutes was a little
It was
brisk.
it's quick.
It is.
You
Yeah,
talk fast
yeah.
and then.
I mean, some people, like, you can do it, but you're used to that. I think some people, it just takes them 40 seconds to
And
take a
sometimes they
breath.
wait 30 minutes just to get up here.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think I would like to keep it at 3 minutes, and then if we want to expand it beyond that, that's
Yeah.
fine. But we keep in mind that we will be considering going to more of remote participation, which increases the amount of public comment. So for the sake of our time, I think we always start a little bit more conservative, and then we can expand
I
it.
agree with
As
that.
long as we can like depend on you guys to say like, hey, 3 minutes, clearly there was a little more comprehensive investigation that needs to go on here. Mike, do you think you guys can follow up and let us know?
Yep.
And just to let you know, I don't start your minutes until after you say.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
And I do think 3 minutes is pretty standard.
Okay.
So 2 minutes feels a little fast to me.
2 minutes is fast.
4 feels long,
4
even though
feels
it's
long.
just a
I
minute.
don't wanna hear anything
So
over 4
it's 3 minutes is pretty typical. So I think it would be nice if when we start our meetings, we can go back to a 3-minute public comment. We'll give you a 1-minute warning when you are getting close. And then when you're finished, you will ask the resident to stop. Now, let's say that a resident is really knee-deep in a conversation and council's engaged. You could then make a motion to allow them to finish their time up at the podium, and if that was approved, they could. So there still is this one-off opportunity. If it was necessary and you wanted to continue that conversation, we would have to stop at the 3 minutes. Someone would have to bring a motion to the table, and you would have to pass it from there. Again, that should be used as an exception and not the rule, and we should try to organize that public comment a little bit more easy to document for us, and I will be following up when we need more follow-up.
Can I insert something? I'm gonna sort of back up to the comments about opening up an item for discussion.
Yeah.
I noticed in the packet, you gave us some information about Robert's rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we may need to talk about that a little bit more, especially with David's preference, that we have a kind of an introduction or a context setting conversation before a motion is made. That's contrary to what we, you know, what we have been trying to do. Our intention was to, and I can't count.
Once it gets a second, you can open it for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's put something on the table to talk about. And that's why Mike often did that. So let's open up the discussion.
Two contexts.
Oh,
That's what I had said. So like it says here, rules of order. You want to bring up a new idea before the group.
Yeah,
In that instance.
Then you have
You
to.
have to have a motion in a second in order to have the dialogue.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is, we're doing.
You wanna set
cell
context
ordinances.
first before we
Yeah,
have a
we're doing-
discussion.
we'll Consider the ordinance.
yeah.
No
And-
motion. It's on
Yeah, the first thing
agenda.
out of the gate, I don't want to be the motion on the ordinance.
Yep.
Agree, I
Yeah.
absolutely support that, and sometimes we need to hear from the attorney. Like, tell us about this, what is it that we're trying to do? And, I mean, I really agree with you, David, I like that approach.
And
But yeah,
I
but somebody
agree.
raising a motion in a meeting, that obviously has to have a motion in a second and then a discussion, because we don't know
Yeah,
that we're
it's just
coming up to
different
it.
ways to do it.
I spoke with people when I was canvassing, and they said that they've come to a meeting and were lost because there was no context setting for the agenda item. And so they came, but they couldn't follow, and especially when they're new to being involved and participating, having that context or having the landscape set by you, Meg, or you, Peter, I think is really helpful for our listeners here and remotely to be involved and understand, you know, the affairs of the village.
And to Pam's point about Robert's rules, you know, there are a lot of really good brief trainings. When you're not working in Robert's rules all day, every day, there are some different things, you know, maybe we could all use a refresher. So let me see if I can find virtual webinar that you could do at your own time. If you should choose, you know, we have a copy of Robert's Rules in your binder, and I gave you a little summary, but it is a little different when you hear it in a training. That could be a great opportunity. So let me see if I can find a resource for that, and then if you'd like to participate in it, you could just join that webinar.
Related to that was another point that David made, and something that you do that I really appreciate is that you draft a resolution that hasn't happened. I find that incredibly helpful so that I know what we're shooting for in a discussion, because a lot of times the agenda will say, consider. What is that, you know, that could mean anything. But what you've done is you've helped us have the conversation by framing a resolution so that we can get to a decision a little bit quicker. We don't have to use that, but I've just found it really helpful.
Thank you.
And if you can figure out a way to make that work with what David's preferences are, I'm good.
And I think that what you'll find, and I'll be starting this in January, it's a new year, the way that I will be presenting agendas to you is agenda items will have an attached memo, which will give you what action is needed, if any, and any background information / timeline, any quick cliff notes that you would need on that discussion. That's there so that we can keep track of supporting materials. Oftentimes, there's items on this agenda that don't have other supporting materials, so then there's just nothing in writing necessarily pertaining to that. Makes it difficult for me to go back and reference certain items and to bring them back up. So the one thing that you'll see is I'll be drafting memos for everything that goes onto our agenda. The other thing that you're gonna see is that resolutions are going to be numbered appropriately so that we have a resolution that's in writing and numbered that we can go back and reference. Again, by not numbering our resolutions like we have it in the past, it makes it really hard to go back and reference action that we've taken. So I think that just structurally, you can expect to see memos attached to agenda items, and how long they are will depend on what the situation at hand is. And then when I am presenting you with a resolution, it's going to be appropriately numbered and classified so we can easily reference it, pull it up, and use it moving forward. So that's something that I'm going to be starting in January. Fresh year, fresh look to that agenda.
Yeah.
Can I make a request on the code of conduct too? I think maybe it's somewhere, but also roles and responsibilities in the midst of meetings around if we've got someone exceeding time, how are we ensuring that, like whose role is it to stop someone's time from speaking or just corral someone or?
I can definitely add that. It's typically, the clerk who would give like a 1-minute warning, but it's normally the president who would stop the public comment.
But just so we're not
Yep.
talking over one another and giving the impression that we're not certain whose role it is.
I wrote that to Meg too, because from the audience perspective, when the council stops a public speaker, it like has a perception that the person on council doesn't want to hear them anymore, when really you're just keeping the process and the structure equitable. So I almost think it would be fair to have from a staff member. So that way it's not like, I want you to stop, or David, you don't want someone to stop, but you're trying to run an equitable meeting and keep compliance with our processes.
The reason that a mayor or a president would normally do that is because it's their meeting and they're administering the meeting.
David's a nice guy, I just don't want him to look like
But
he's.
if you rather that I cut off public comment, I don't think that that's.
It's up to him.
Is it?
It could be delegated to Meg.
Okay. It's not common, but it could be.
I think it's the president, it's chairman's job, because he's got to hold on to the meeting.
And I do think that the informality and kind of chaos that previously existed probably felt significantly more that way when we put a ton of process where it's clear you're running the meeting and kind of directing everything, that the enforcement's gonna come off more organic than it otherwise would have in the past.
Good point.
That is a really good point, yeah.
But ultimately, between you two to kind of
Whatever
decide
you
on
want
that.
to do. But that would be something I would put in our code of conduct, so we have it just for everybody. That's
Okay.
good.
Going back to the code of conduct, if I can.
No,
take
yeah.
it. I'd like to see, a more, like a robust section on ethics, including gifts, acquisitions and procurement, financial interest, use of official title, endorsement using the official seal. Like, those are really important, as holding a position of public trust,
Yeah.
that people don't abuse those, using the Franklin crest, having lunches with, contractors that have procurements with the village. Are you reporting those lunches? Are you getting a gift of wine over the holidays? How much is that gift? I know there's a Michigan Code of Ethics for the legislature, and I think that if, say, you own a business that bids on a contract for the village, you should be reporting that. Do you have any financial ties to the village when you're a planning commissioner, when you're a zoning board member, when you're on the Historic District Commission? Are you using your official title and official capacity in your personal affairs? Are you representing yourself to the public on your social media that you're a member of, the village council, but you're not saying these are your own interests? Like, those to me are really important, because it's about the brand of Franklin and respecting the office. It is the office of the Franklin trustee.
So a lot of those components would be included in a code of conduct. One thing that you mentioned there, though, I'm talking a code of conduct for council tonight. I'm not speaking directly to writing a code of conduct for planning or for a ZBA. Those could be discussions that we have at a different time. But yes, a lot of the components that you labeled there are just really standard code of conduct language that I'll incorporate in a draft, because I definitely think that those are important. And they're not the only place you can read those, a lot of those things are laid out in our charter or in our ordinances, but it's good to put them in one spot. So absolutely, I would imagine most of those components would be included in the code of conduct draft that I bring in December. And if, when you see the draft, if there's anything you'd like to add, we can have a discussion about that at that meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, so you'll put together something for us to review whenever you have it ready.
Sounds good. Yes, I will get that to you.
Okay. So our next item is our appointments. So, as we had kind of discussed earlier, I have taken the time to have some personal discussions with each of the different trustees about areas that they're of their interest and areas where I felt that they would be best served for the village based on their professional backgrounds and stuff. So what I'm gonna suggest is as we go down these items, I will just give the people that I would suggest be in those positions, and then if anyone has a problem with one of the areas that I've either suggested you be, or in the alternative, an area where you really would have preferred to be, then let's make that part of the discussion, and if we have to do some adjusting accordingly, fine. I tried to take some cognizance to prior roles, also cognizant of that, get some people out of prior roles that they've been in to get them in new roles. I also want to make sure that we use this as an opportunity as when you're in your committee meetings, there's also a better way to get to know the other trustees. So we have new trustees, some of us who haven't worked with others, so I'd also like to see us kind of mixing up who you're working with. So just going down the list. So the first item is our village treasurer, who has been Lance for a while now, and I imagine is going to continue to be Lance. I don't know if we love Lance, but I'm not sure, Lance has been doing this a long time. I'm sure if we asked Lance, he might probably not have major heartburn if we were to have found someone else to replace him, particularly because some of the limitations he even has in being the treasurer. So I guess, have we, in a while, ever sent, and we have a whole new, kind of a new, a whole bunch of new residents. We could have a whole bunch more CPAs and people like that we don't know of that have been here in the past, nor do they even know that there's a position that could get you involved in village government. So, and I'll talk to Lance about it specifically, but from my knowledge in discussing with him in the past, if we were able to find somebody, if there was someone in the village that qualified for a treasurer, I'm sure Lance would love a little time off. So I would suggest we maybe add that to, positions if somebody wants to apply for it, because we're going to have
An open council seat.
an open council seat, an open ZBA seat.
Open ZBA
And then depending on who gets appointed to council, if they come from one of our bodies, that would be another opening.
Absolutely, so I would think that, I agree, I can't ever remember a discussion about anyone else being the treasurer but Lance. I think that if you wanted to connect with Lance
I'm
on
going to touch base with
that.
him and see if would certainly be open for us trying to find him a replacement. If he's super happy and comfortable, then, we don't have to go down that road.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate working with Lance, and I think he's done a great job.
Absolutely.
And Lance, he does give us a lot of his time and be able to help us there, so I'm very appreciative for Lance. I would have absolutely no objection to when we see what other vacancies that we're going to have, that we add treasurer as an option, and when we're advertising for applicants to come in and apply for a potential position, that treasurer would be one that we were considering.
There's some charter language around the treasurer, and I think we're barely compliant.
Barely.
It is definitely a sticky spot. It could be difficult to find another
Well,
treasurer.
we've advertised, and like you said, there are new people that might want to volunteer. Maybe we should post the position again, if Lance doesn't want to do it.
I think,
But it's a little cobbled together, the
Yeah.
function is, so I appreciate what you're saying.
I think to Abby's point, though, I think there needs to be a roles and responsibilities, because if you just refer people to the charter, some people don't know how to read statutory language. So I think writing, maybe Lance could give 5 bullets of what he does, and then that could be included, because if I were to read village treasurer, be like, oh, wait, is that village trustee? What's the difference, and is that full-time, and what's the time commitment, what's the professional certifications that are necessary in order to qualify for this role, et cetera.
Definitely, when I would advertise that, I would definitely have a description of the role.
And as we talk about this, part of me is immediately like, okay, as we go through this process, even with Lance, whoever it is, just looking at and defining our controls for checks and balances against the treasurer, given the fact that if we open it, like, recent drama within the village, right, and an opportunity to serve in the capacity where you're touching finances, we just need to make sure that if we are soliciting, walking into that we understand what our controls are and if we have to improve them.
Absolutely. Our controls are actually in really good shape.
Okay.
We remodified a lot of our controls when we brought Plant Moran over, and Lance doesn't actually touch
Yeah,
finances. He reports on
Right.
finances and is a critical role in remaining in the checks and balances. But as far as authority to
Serves as
sort of,
guidance.
yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't really have that as one of his roles and responsibilities. Another reason why a description is important for that.
right.
A lot of the checks and balances, all of the financial checks and balances are really between, council and within our staff. Lance is here to mostly just report over. So, I could see that it being, an important thing to clarify, definitely when we're posting for that position.
We, just so you know, we just went through a significant vetting process for the treasurer for the SBA. Everyone knows the circumstance. So we do have a new CPA who is retained to help us get our house in order. I can share that information, David, with you and with Meg, and we can determine whether he's at all interested in joining us as treasurer of the village. Lance is not a CPA, he's a financial guy, but he's done a great job, and unless he's anxious to leave, I would say, why not leave it be? But we can certainly open it up to the public, or I can bring another name forward and vet it and see if they have an interest in joining us.
And just to be clear, I really like what Lance has done.
Yeah.
And
Same.
he is as professional as they get.
And we
but
were
Yeah, my
You know.
comment has nothing to do with Lance,
Yeah,
other
yeah.
than
Right.
Lance might just want a break.
He may want to, you need to talk to him.
Do
Yeah.
we do any security checks, background checks, credit checks on the candidates when we appoint them to,
For what?
for instance, the treasurer role or planning or,
Not for our other
That
boards.
no?
But for the treasurer, I would definitely do a background check. We just have had Lance for so long.
Yeah, I'm saying for any new candidate, just to prevent any similar situation that's happened.
Before Lance got involved, we did have volunteer treasurers, but they were well-known people and owned their own business, their CPA firms. They were not strangers, so, but I get your point.
Yeah, I just don't trust
I
it.
think for your treasurer, that's a valuable thing. Obviously, there's cost and administration that's
Yeah.
required. So for every board and commission, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But I do think for treasurer, if we were to consider anyone outside of Lance, that background check would be important.
Yeah.
Okay. Deputy treasurers, I know we've had multiple in the past. Right now, it looks like the only one is Mark Hankey. And I would suggest we keep it that way. Meg, you want to reach out to him and just confirm that he's okay with that?
Absolutely. And then another thing that we talked about in regards to deputy treasurer is in the past, the administrator wouldn't sign checks, and that was a role of a deputy treasurer would come in and be able to sign checks. Now, over the past few years, that has changed to where Roger was signing the checks, and that makes sense from a checks and balances standpoint too, because he's not directly involved in issuing any of the checks, and the report has to be approved by council. So I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be signing checks on behalf of the city. I'm gonna bring forward a resolution, just so we can put that in writing, that I'm being granted the permission to go ahead and do that, and I'll do that at our December meeting. And I will go ahead and reach out to Mark Hankey about, that deputy role.
Okay?
Is there a certain dollar amount up to that your resolution will have? Like you can sign checks up to X amount?
all spending is laid out
Okay.
in our ordinances, and so, that all needs approval by
Okay.
council,
Okay, perfect.
like over the certain dollar amount.
Okay, next item is council liaison to the fire commission, which is traditionally only one person. As far as that role, I'm actually gonna, put myself there. I've had a couple of the people on the fire board reach out to me and ask if I would consider being in that role. So, an area of the village I'd like to learn a little more about is our fire department and how our relationship with them exists. So, I'm gonna appoint myself as the liaison to the fire commission. Village representative to the Birmingham Cable Board. So currently, that is Mr. Rick David, who is present here today. Rick, would you like to continue on as our Birmingham Area Cable Board representative liaison? I guess you're a representative, not a liaison. Okay, good.
Thank you.
You'll be voting in December. This is just more or less proposals, as opposed to anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
solidified.
although I thought said we didn't have to vote on this. I thought that, do we have to vote on these things?
Well, section 12 of the charter says that by majority vote,
For all-
the Village of Franklin Council shall have the authority to appoint advisory committees, I'm sorry. So if it's a representative or liaison, that might be a little different, but if it's advisory committees, then it would have to be by Franklin Council. This could easily be wrapped up by motion.
All right, well, here's what we're
Why don't
gonna
we
do.
just do
What
that?
we're gonna do is, Dana and Meg are gonna keep track of this,
Yep.
as am I, and then we're gonna put it into one big piece of paper,
Yep.
and then at our next meeting, we'll ratify it in mass. If anything needs to get pulled out, kind of like a consent agenda, then we'll pull a particular item or a particular committee or appointment out and have further discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm gonna suggest Rick stay on the cable board. Birmingham Next, Mike Seltzer has been our representative, and I know Mike would like to continue on in that capacity, so I'm gonna suggest that Mike be our representative with Next, although when there's months when Mike's not in town, I would suggest that Abby be his alternative.
Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're not ratifying anything.
No, yeah, this is what I'm suggesting. Yeah, again, if you have a problem with that, let us know or let me know. I mean, I did,
I've done it. I backed up Mike.
Yeah, yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a funky little board,
I
but it's okay.
particularly think that this is a huge year between us and Next.
It
We're
is.
gonna make
Abby plays
we're gonna be making,
pickleball, So
yeah.
she's like
yeah,
right
we're
for
gonna be
this.
making a critical decision with our relationship with Next in the next year,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I definitely wanna make
And our
sure that
relationship
either
with
Mike
Birmingham.
or some other person is there at every meeting, so.
Yeah.
And I am,
I can give you, Abby, an update on where we are with that. There is a very controversial issue before us. Cam and I are very, very much focused and involved in that. And since you'll be taking on the monthly meetings between now and spring, both she and I can give you a lot of information to prepare you for what is happening and what we do when we report to Next each month.
Okay,
It's very straightforward.
sounds great.
And we're gonna do a workshop on
We are.
Next at some point. That'll be really good to level set with everybody.
I think we all should get an education on
We
Next.
really need to.
Without
Yes.
question.
So
'cause
I'm-
another area that I don't know enough about.
Agreed, and definitely a resource that we use in the village and support in the village. So my plan would be, a next workshop, I think would fall somewhere in like the end of January, beginning of February.
That works for me.
Works for me. Is there anything urgent coming up, Mike? That would require?
I mean, the entirety of the issue with our current location and hoped plan for future location is very much up in the air.
Okay,
I've been very aggressive about having a fallback position, and they seem to agree with me. At the last meeting, we had a spirited discussion about that. So I think Pam, you know where that's at. But if we need to, maybe Pam, you and I and Abby can have a call this week and just do a little download.
I think that's a good idea. My question was, is there any reason that a workshop needs to be scheduled before February? And it sounds like it doesn't.
No,
Okay, good. Thank you.
yeah, okay.
Okay. And my appointments aren't totally random. I have kept a tally, and we range between no one has less than 3 or more than 5. So, as far as committees or liaisons. So the next is our representatives to Main Street. We currently keep 2 representatives, and these are both voting members on the board?
Correct?
Okay, and I know that Mike and Pam have been doing it historically. I'm gonna suggest that Mike and Angelina do it this time. I know Angelina would really like to get involved in Main Street and do wonderful there, and I know that's a passion of yours, so I'd love to get Angelina on Main Street and keep Mike for some continuity. And if we ever needed a backup, I would recommend Pam be that person that filled in.
I'm delighted. It'll be a great experience.
Yeah. I like Main Street.
It's in a good place. It's in a completely different place than I
Well, and you were our first full-time hire, you know? It was amazing, so.
Main Street Historic District Commission. So this is a liaison. This is someone that has to attend every one of their meetings when they exist. And I would like to leave that spot open for whoever he or she is that we appoint as our 7th trustee. So I'm just holding that as the appointee spot, but I'd like to see our appointee sit in that role. Next one, which frankly I consider the most important liaison that we have. The Planning Commission is our right hand, they're our heartbeat. We're only as good as our Planning Commission is producing documents for us. So I would like to see David Solly. I've discussed it with David. I know that's something you'd like to do. I think, David, you could do some real good things getting Planning Commission kind of back on track, make sure that Planning Commission and Council are on the same page. I watch those meetings and I just feel like we are not on the same page right now. I think they definitely feel that we're not on the same page. So I would love to see you take an active role in making sure that we operate as one moving forward. Because like I said, we're only as good as our Planning Commission is. Finance Committee, again, another one of our heartbeat subcommittees. This one is one we're going to probably have our most individuals on, and probably our only committee where I'm going to suggest that there are actually even people that aren't on council participate in it, so that we can use some of those brains that we have in the village that aren't sitting on any of our bodies. So the Finance Committee that I would like would consist of Pam, Angelina. I'm going to put myself on there more so that I know what's going on and am actively involved in our budget, but I will admit that my helpfulness might not be the greatest, I'm more of a wordsmith than a numbersmith, so I want to make sure got my hands around the agenda, but Pam and Angelina from our council representatives. Rick, I've discussed with you, if you would be able to participate in our finance committee, we would love to be able to pick at your brain. I know you've been on top of our budgets as we've been moving forward the last couple of years, so I would love to get you involved in that, if that's something you would consider. And I know that Lance has in the past also been on the subcommittee, so I would of course welcome Lance to also participate. I'll make sure when I talk to him, see if he wants to stay on finance committee.
Yeah, because he has come each time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I would like him to continue to do that. So that's who I am suggesting for finance committee. Legal committee, which right now, we're gonna need to replace 2 people. For legal committee, I'm gonna suggest the 2 attorneys that we have on council, myself and David, and then this is something that Pam had done in the past.
3 attorneys on council.
I know, I forgot that. I always forget that you're an attorney. I'm sorry, sweetheart.
So-
That was not correct, that wasn't nice. We do have 3 attorneys, but you've been pretty clear about your position on,
No, I don't
committees.
want to do legal.
yeah. and
I do legal all day.
Yeah, I didn't get the impression that you were wanting to be, I'd rather,
I'd rather do the shopping on Main Street.
for sure.
I got it.
So, myself, David, and Pam for legal committee. Personnel committee, which again is another one of our central committees.
Oh, did we skip liquor?
Liquor.
Oh, I'm going by my list, I'm sorry, my bad. So right now, we have 3 on liquor control, correct?
2, well, sorry, 3 sat. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
How
did
many?
3 people sit on it?
Yes, 3, yeah, sorry.
So, were you on it this last time around? You
I was.
sorry, so I was thinking David, Mike, and again, another spot for our appointee. All right, then next is Personnel Committee. Okay, Personnel Committee, another one of what I consider our big 3 committees, and the ones that start all of our dealings on our relationship with, whether it's our staff or looking for new employees. So on this committee, I was thinking Mike, who's been on there before, so you have 1 carryover. Abby, who would be wonderful in this position, and Pam, who has a lot of good continuity with all of our existing contracts and things like that. So Mike, Abby, and Pam as the Personnel Committee.
First meeting, I'm going to make a motion that we rename it.
I was just gonna say the same thing. I'm like, personnel
It's
is
a
like.
terrible name. I think it's a
Not even-
holdover from the 60s.
Yeah,
Yeah, what is it, should it be?
People apps.
people, no, just people.
Just people.
Yeah,
People Committee?
Yeah,
thank you, Pam.
you're welcome. I
Well,
knew
see,
you would.
that's what
feel
happens
that
when
way.
you get people that are
Died a little inside.
Experts in it.
experts in the field, which is why we want Abby there. So, excellent. It'll be our new People Committee. I like that, that sounds better.
So when I put
Personnel
this
is so
on
formal.
our December agenda, are we good with me just calling it our people committee now?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
called People Committee. No problem with that. Village People Committee.
The Village People
Village People.
Committee?
Do you have to play the song every time they meet?
You know what? As I said it, I wasn't even thinking that I was saying it. You guys all heard it, but that doesn't really roll off that well.
All right, we'll workshop.
We'll brainstorm that.
Maybe it'll just be the People Committee of the village.
Of the village, yeah.
Of the village, yeah, I like
The
that.
Franklin People Committee.
Yeah, the Franklin People Committee.
I've got a Halloween costume for next year then. We keep it as Village People Committee.
Next is streetscape. I am suggesting Pam and Abby. I had myself down as the third, only just to fill another spot, although if there is anyone that would like to be on the street committee, and I'll even open that up to our appointee when we find he or she, I don't have a problem not doing that, but I also would have no problem doing it. I think it's a great area, and
Can I make a comment? Could we possibly like rename that to either like infrastructure, like streetscape and road, or even like
yeah, because it was
pathways, or
streetscape committee when we were really doing the streetscape, right?
connectivity, like infrastructure and connectivity committee, just because there's lots of
So,
negative connotation with the
Let's talk
streetscape.
about that.
There is?
Because,
Are you joking?
Well, if there is.
Oh, I thought
we
you
should-
were being facetious.
No,
Oh, yeah.
if there is, we should.
I don't think there is anymore. There was 2 years ago. I would hope to think
You
that,
should not. Oh.
I would hope. So,
But again, I mean, whatever, discussion for another time.
What is it?
Well, Pam, I mean, there's just, again, it was contentious at the time, and those people are, some people are going to hold on to their feelings about it. That doesn't make them the majority, right? So like, I think Angelina's point is if we continue to operate under streetscape, we're bringing in probably some assumptions as to just regardless, we're bringing in assumptions of what's happening.
well, so here's the general question. We had a streetscape committee when we were working on the streetscape. We have a roads committee, which has been more active during just before and just after we redo our roads. So, 4 years ago, the roads committee was huge. Right now, the roads committee is pretty non-existent. Do we want to combine the streetscape
Yes,
committee and the
absolutely.
roads committee and just have it one overall
It
infrastructure
It
committee?
needs, I think it needs to be
And then that,
integrated.
and just have that just cover infrastructure, whether it's roads, storm drainage, sewer, water.
Yeah, I.
Anytime we have an
And that's how it was
issue,
organized before, it was one committee, they were combined committees, and then they were separated based on the projects that were moving through and the attention that they each needed, so, combining roads and streetscape into an infrastructure committee, I can see that working.
so here's what I'm gonna suggest. Let's combine our roads and our streetscape committee into an infrastructure committee. And from who I had on there. So I can come off.
What's the main goal of that? I mean, so connectivity, infrastructure, is there any other large initiatives?
There could be, I mean, we're looking at potentially putting a sidewalk on 13 Mile, that would be something
Yeah.
that would go to that committee. We continue to look at, different ways to
Funding.
light the downtown,
Yeah,
along
some
the
water. I know
streets
one of the
and-
things that the fire board wants to talk,
Yeah.
that's why they want me on there, is they need a water
A
source.
reserve, yep.
A water source for putting out fires, so I think all of that could all fall into
Absolutely.
infrastructure.
I like that.
That committee could be the first level of dealing with Nancy on the stormwater projects that we have going on.
I'd like to see some relationship building with the Oakland County Road Commission, Oakland County government for funding sources for road diets and more non-traditional modes of transportation. And I think that, in talking to a lot of neighbors, besides sidewalks, you could have protected bike lanes, you could have pathways, you could have a lot of these more integrated, safe pedestrian walkways that could leverage road funds through Oakland County Road Commissions when they come back and they have a schedule of when they're repaving certain roads that intersect Franklin. We can leverage that timing and possibly synchronize and use the resources and not expend solely Franklin funds on it. Just from the streetscape, the negative connotation is a lot of the supporters of the sidewalk don't support the way the project was paid for or managed or budgeted, because the two were like collapsed or, and then it got a negative connotation from the latter part. Whereas I think a lot of people definitely celebrate and embrace and recognize the benefits of the sidewalk.
It was a very difficult process, and being in the middle of it, it was very difficult. My feeling about the streetscape committee is the streetscape's over with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
agree.
we had it, we needed it, there were design decisions to make, contractors to oversee, and the people who were on that committee with me are no longer on the council. So my proposal would be to abandon that. I think the only remaining issues are some bills.
Yeah,
To-
and we're working on it.
And we're working on it through finance, you guys are working on it. The road committee, if you recall, when we had in 18 and 19 and 20, when we did the roads in the village, you know, again, there were subcontractors to oversee, and we had some people on council that hated road asphalt people. And and that's really what that road committee was for. It ended up being a really good thing to have it, but I don't see either of those committees as standing. I see them as ad hoc for the moment. And the evolution of that into an infrastructure committee makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense to me.
And that committee doesn't have to meet super regular unless
It
there's
doesn't.
something going
Yep.
on. So I'm actually gonna suggest that all of our newest trustees, I'm
Okay.
gonna suggest the appointee Abby and Angelina.
The third attorney.
Pardon?
The
The third attorney.
You're too nice.
All right, so last is, well, the last on this list is Birmingham Youth Assistance, which again has been Mike historically. I'm gonna suggest the same thing that we did with Next, which have it be Mike. And then when Mike's not around, our newly appointed trustee can fill in there. And with that, so Pam and I will each have one less committee. So yeah, we're still ranging between 5 and 4.
What's the
Committees.
youth assistance? What's the intention there?
So Birmingham Youth Assistance is they're a
Nonprofit.
The 501c3.
but are they a totally private organization? They're not affiliated with any government in
No.
any way?
Correct.
They're just one of the organizations, kind of like Next, that we
Yes.
have had a standing relationship with, I guess, with the older part of our community and the younger part of our community. And we have a liaison that goes to their meetings so that we're understanding what's going on, and we have used our, our GBD funds in the past. Yeah, CBGD funds.
For what? What are we-
To give it to them.
So I can explain this real quick. So every year, we're allocated a certain amount of CDBG funds out of HUD just for being a local municipality. And so what we have to do is then we'll have different proposals that come in to allocate those funds. Typically, we have our standard 2 to 3 that submit every year. Birmingham Youth Assistance is one of them. And so as a result of us on occasion awarding it, we've had a representative because they do service our area, similar to how Next does. So it'd be like,
So what programs?
yeah, so it's
tutoring?
kind of all over the place. You have like,
Police
mental health
diversion.
type of stuff. You have, tutoring, limited though. It's more around, at least the thing that I kind of gravitated towards and dug more into was the mental health aspect of
Yeah.
support.
That's the largest aspect
Yeah.
of it. We have officers dedicated at the
Yeah.
police department who participate in the youth assistance. They're really looking to provide resources for family or children who are struggling. And struggling can mean in multiple different ways. So they're providing different types of interventions. If there's a child, you know, who has behavioral issues or mental health issues, they may be sitting down with our liaison from the PD, working with the family to try and help navigate a path forward. Anyways, the program itself is its own 501c3. We don't control the programs that they put out. They are constantly modifying those, but we do help support them and often award our funds over to them. And then that's why we have the liaison on the board.
Is that something interesting?
Can I swap next for youth assistance?
Yeah,
What if you just flip those two? So,
I will.
yeah, as far as Mike, Abby backs up Mike on next, Mike backs up Abby on Birmingham Youth Assistance.
Oh, okay.
The issue with Mike is he's not here.
Yeah,
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that was the point. It was
he's
that-
here, but he's not here.
Yeah, it was sort of like, one of them went for 6 meetings. and
Yeah.
One of them
Yeah.
went for 6 meetings. But if what you're saying is you prefer the youth assistants over the next, so.
Yeah. I've enrolled
So
hard in
going
senior
back
intake.
to what we had, so Birmingham next will be Mike and the appointee,
Got it?
Yeah,
and then youth assistants will be Mike and Abby.
but Abby and Mike,
Well, Abby and Mike, yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
David? Or should I call you Mr. President?
El Jefe.
Um,
David works.
Capo. I know that we're not allowed to approve advisory committees tonight, but I had wrote Meg, some of the other areas that I felt were like large interest areas for residents, and I think the village is procurement and acquisitions, like reviewing our procurements and acquisitions, how we bid them out, how we validate and do reasonableness checks on our vendors, how often we review the terms of the contract, what they do with our data, are we getting the best value, are we using lowest price technically acceptable, are we leveraging our municipal position in order to cut costs and save money, telecom and utilities, and then outreach and communications. So not for tonight, but just some big areas that I'd like to have some more focus on, that I think, like, if we do it at a council meeting, there's never enough time.
And this is something more than just what Finance Committee would deal with?
I would do a subcommittee under finance.
For acquisition?
And I would also say that a lot of the things that you just described in procurement are roles of the administrator.
Okay.
You know, like, it is my job and role as your administrator to be looking at those
Okay.
things, and I can see a little bit of a crossover there. Now, of course, like, council feedback and being present in those decisions is always important, and we bring those to council meetings, but as far as getting in the nitty gritty of most of our procurement process, that would be my role as an administrator.
Okay. Just want to make sure it's happening, like, we're looking at our
Right.
contracts.
But that doesn't mean you
Acquisition.
can't be in communication with Meg.
No, and it doesn't mean
Versus
that.
having to create a whole subcommittee for it.
Exactly. And when I have new contracts that we need to discuss, I mean, and I've obtained my bids and I bring them forward, those are coming to council for discussion. So it's not that the items don't eventually make their way to council, just for, you know, approval, but as far as like getting into the actual management of the contracts, that is my role.
Yeah, not so much the management, more of like the acquisition process, like contracts over X amount of dollars
Yep.
need to get how many bids, who's the technical evaluation panel, how are we doing our due diligence, like, I do government
I
contracts.
could give you a summary on
Yeah.
procurement if you'd like that.
Okay.
I mean, it's really guided a lot by our charter, it's gonna be guided by ordinance and by state law.
Okay.
And so those are definitely decisions that are made, that are heavily rooted in policy of which already exists.
Okay.
So maybe like a one page on kind of what we're looking for and what we're bound by could be helpful for council. But those aren't things that are changing frequently. They're not things that we wouldn't take to council for a full discussion if something needed to be done. That if we were gonna change a procurement policy, that would have to go in front of all of council to be voted on, and I would make sure that it got there. I don't see necessarily where a subcommittee fits in that per se, but definitely being aware of how we make those decisions
Yeah.
is very important, and I can provide that information.
I don't want to be involved in managing the contracts, just making sure the acquisition process is fair, equal, open, competitive.
Yep.
And in compliance with municipal, benchmarks and best practices.
Absolutely, and that is my role as an
Okay.
administrator.
So I like David's idea of that sort of being a subcommittee of the finance committee, and Angelina, you're on the finance committee, so if you want to take a lead on that type of stuff, working with Meg. Feel free.
And my only suggestion to that would be not to create a subcommittee of it, because that may overstep too much into your
No, I'm
authority,
not
whereas
actually
compared
making
to
it
just
formal, I'm
finance.
just saying, make
If I have a question.
procurement and acquisition
Yeah,
something that
exactly.
finance is looking
Absolutely.
into, and if Angelina wants to take a lead on that.
Well, the other reality is, we've got a lot of new talented people around this table. And there are some things that have not been done in the village that all of us know about. And I hear you communicating, God, we need to do, those need to be, tightened up. One of them is, we have not had a review of all of our contracts. We are a contracted village.
Yes.
We have no services.
Yep.
So, and I will tell you that, depending on who your administrator is, that floats around on the priority list. What I think you're saying, and I agree with you, this is something that's important to this new council. I hear you saying, yep. And so this is our time now to say, do we have confidence in you that you can manage that on behalf of the village? And, I have a lot of confidence in you. And I also would expect that if you need expertise in contracts, we also have people on this council with deep expertise in that. We also have a village attorney. You're supported.
Absolutely.
So just needed to say that.
Yep, and I think that, to Angelina's point, a one-pager on kind of how we've
Yeah.
been doing this is
Absolutely.
absolutely, that's critical. I can see that being very helpful for everyone, including myself, just having a resource to point to is say, here's our process, because we
Yeah.
are following the process. But have you had a one-pager on that? Probably not. So that is something I can definitely clear up. And also, my authority is not overreaching, and so anytime that I'm entering into a new contract, those have to go through council.
Yeah.
So there's still this good checks and balance, transparency, and acting equitably are the top priorities for me. So I think that we're all kind of saying the same thing here.
Yeah, and to the point of the code of ethics, I would love a list of our village vendors, so we can all be aware, if we go somewhere and we are interacting with a vendor of the village, we know how to conduct ourselves. They don't get the impression that they're going to get the next contract because they went out to lunch with us, or because we attended their holiday party. I mean, we all are working professionals, and we may have a overlap in who we use in our personal professional lives and who the village, so like a list of, these are our vendors, this is the contract number, a brief description of the services or the goods that we're procuring, when that contract ends, how long is it? Because if we're in the middle of a solicitation period, I shouldn't be interacting with the vendors. Once that goes out to bid, I should have no communication with them. So just keeping ethics and transparency and accountability a very high priority, to not give the impression of any financial conflict or sort of preference. That would just be helpful, because I'm very big on not crossing any ethical lines when it comes to contracts, procurement, financial interests.
I definitely think that that's a good idea and could be a very useful resource. Since we are a contracted village, there are a million contracts, that's not something that I could prepare by December.
No.
But I do think that starting in our new year, that's a very useful tool, and we should be able to comprehensively look at our contracts. And so I will work on getting that together and getting that over.
I'm just
to council.
immediately thinking, we all have lawn services. And all of a sudden we, use a new lawn service and they think, oh, they're a trustee. Well, I might be the next one up for the grounds contract for the village. And we didn't even know that that was out to bid. And now they think they've gotten some preferential treatment. And we don't want any of that. So I want to
Absolutely.
know who's a vendor of the village, so we can make sure that those lines aren't blurred.
Oh, I think
We,
that's a good idea.
will we share this code of conduct externally? Like, will this be something that
All
we share?
public, everything.
But I mean,
that-
like, are we making it a special point to say, all right, come January 1st, we've revisited these things, we firmed up the language and shared with,
It would be at the council meeting, it would be in the packet, it would be in the recording, it would be an official document of the council, so it would be discussed publicly, it'll be on our webpage in multiple spots, and it is a part of the public record.
yeah.
Are you saying like when it becomes effective?
Yeah, I mean, there's that, sure. I mean, I could put together a handbook for a company I work with, and it's in the record, it is a part of our governing agreement within the organization. But is it something that we advertise and say, this is something that's so important to us? We have, explained and advertised to our voters that we've made these changes and firmed up language in these ways.
I'm not sure what you mean by advertise, like do a Facebook post that we're having that?
So a couple of things that I could do as a recommendation there is like something that makes sense is like attaching it to the this week and the next, following the meeting that we pass it, to just say like the village has passed a code of conduct for its meetings, here's a link to the.
Yeah, maybe announce is a better word to use than advertise.
Yeah, probably, okay, so just, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, just from a transparency
Yeah.
and, here's what you can expect moving forward from this council kind of standpoint.
And when we remind people that we're bound by this code of conduct, they also can hold us as elected officials accountable to it. And so I think that's to Abby's point of like why we need to announce it. So if they do see, something that we're doing that goes against the code of conduct, they have the right to say, hey, you've signed this code of conduct, you are in this position of public trust, and like you said, it has a little teeth, and they can report to you, they can bring it up at public comment, and it has that accountability and integrity factor to it, because I think all of us on here want to like raise the professionalism of the council.
Okay. So we've gone through the entirety of staff's list, just in reading through our various materials. So David, does Pathways exist in any way, shape, or form right now? Is there a Pathways
We
committee?
kicked that down to the planning commission, now is responsible for that.
Okay.
Not kicked down, but
Yeah,
delegated the
we just
authority
got
on it.
them on the lead on that, so there's no Pathways committee.
And I would suggest that that would get pulled into the new infrastructure committee as well, for oversight.
Yep. Diversity, equity, inclusion, that's been dissolved as well. That basically generated our appointment guidelines, which was a good thing, which we continue to follow, and we will for this next round of appointments.
Are those included in here, those appointment guidelines?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, I just
right
wanna make
here.
sure.
Yeah.
Not a separate tab, though?
The only other two boards that I saw reading through our materials was a construction board of appeals and a fire board of appeals,
Yep,
which, I don't know, I think I've been on the construction board of appeals in the past. I don't know of either of those ever having met.
they really rarely meet, we have to have them, they're statutory, we do have to have construction board of appeals and fire board of appeals, but I have not seen
From
any of them.
what I've seen in the past, they were just residents.
Yes, they do not need to be members of council.
What's the role of
what
construction?
do they do?
Either of them.
The
or both.
construction board of appeals would meet if there was a dispute between, say, the building official and,
On
you
like
know.
a code issue.
Yes,
As opposed to where you would normally go to the ZBA for a variance.
correct,
This would be a code dispute.
yes.
Okay.
And every municipality is required to have one.
So what do you want to suggest? Do you want to put it out there and see if people will sign up? Do you want us to can't just randomly appoint people. We have to get their permission.
It's, in every newsletter, it's always been out there, so that we are taking applications for.
Nobody takes, nobody.
But there's no roles and responsibilities, so no one knows what it's for. So I wouldn't sign up for something I didn't know
I
what
mean, we
it's
know
for.
what it's for.
Yeah, we don't even know what it's for, so it could be more descriptive announcement, you could,
Is there some language describing what that
Trigger
committee is
applicants.
when, on the website, Dana? No, it's just an announcement of it.
It's always been there since I've started.
Got it, okay.
I mean, we
Peter,
can
do you know
put-
where it would come from?
It comes from the state.
Yeah, it's.
Like the zoning enabling act or something like that?
MCL 125.15.
Hold on, slow down.
Sorry.
Say that again. Hold on, where was that?
MCL 125.1514.
125.1254.
you're only a numbers person when it is part of the Michigan codified law, huh?
Yeah, but if you told me to add those, I'd probably not be able to do it. So, I mean, I'll just take a peek at the statute and see what it says has to be in existence. And if it has to exist and we don't get residents to do it,
I know.
let me go online, or let me read it, see if it has a minimum number, and then let's just appoint council
There
members
is
to it.
between 3 and 7.
Yeah,
And,
so let's just appoint 3 council members to each of them and call it a day.
Yeah, and then that way we're meeting that requirement,
Exactly.
and they don't meet, and historically speaking, we
So,
haven't had.
and if anybody ever signs up, then we'll swap out a council person or add them to it, because in the past it was 5 Board of Appeals, Construction Board of Appeals, and 6 Fire Board of Appeals on your little chart.
Yeah, that's a,
It's a lot.
that is
Fire
a lot.
Board of Appeals, what do they do?
They never really met. I mean, I just talked to Bill Denon about this the other day. We don't think the construction board has met in years and years and years and
Okay,
years.
Definitely
well,
has not.
that'll be interesting,
So,
okay.
just coming from the ZBA, we do have some questions a lot of times about ordinances and how they're interpreted and how the building official interprets it versus how residents interpret it. So like, I didn't even know that existed and I was on the ZBA. And I think that knowing that there's a avenue to get some input on legislative intent from the council, and not put, Peter's reading the ordinance, but he doesn't know necessarily the legislative intent of it, and then Bill's trying to interpret it, and there's like kind of a lot of discrepancy, and so I think maybe using it more often. I don't know what the statute says,
Yeah, I was
to
just gonna-
David's point, but if it seems like it is a equivalent of a ZBA, then it may be a useful tool that we're underutilizing. No? Okay.
It's a really limited committee. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
so is this
Peter.
for the construction, is that?
Yeah.
what-
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the statute says if an enforcing agency refuses to grant an application for a building permit, then, or if the agency makes any other decision pursuant to this act, the interested person may appeal in writing to this particular Board of Appeals.
And I will say, Bill does a really good job at plugging it all the time. He will give it as an option when he is in a roadblock with a resident and he knows that it's coming down, obviously as our building official, to his interpretation. He will offer that as a solution. So it would be the burden of the resident to write the letter to the committee to then have the committee organize and then see that. That's given to them as options when it's applicable.
But that doesn't overlap with the scope of the ZBA? Because what you read kind of seems like the ZBA takes those cases where there's a conflict of,
It would, if it's variance related, dimensional, or, that would belong with the ZBA. These other issues related to construction permits would be appealed.
so this is private sector, we're talking businesses.
I think anything.
Individuals who have a contractor working on their
Okay.
home.
Yeah, I think
It's
that's-
not a variance that we need, but it is in regards to if the permit is being released or how the permit is being interpreted.
Yeah, more
Okay.
the operational end versus the ordinance end, which is
Correct,
what ZBA is
yes.
focusing on. And if,
Right, if it's site or setback, then it'd go to ZBA.
Or really ordinance interpretations.
what I want to look at in the statute is does the statute expressly say that this has to be something different than your zoning board of appeals? Or can your zoning board of appeals just sit in the same
Act as a-
capacity?
Yeah, usually there's like, they'll do like guidance
can't
on
they
the
do
law.
that?
Right.
And they'll say like, this is
ZBA
where
be
the
fire
ZBA
board
and the
the
construction board of
construction
appeals.
board.
I've always seen them separate.
Separate. I'm thinking that there has to be.
There may be some charter.
I don't see anything here that says it's separate, but I'm just wondering hypothetically if there would be some type of.
Conflict?
Conflict, yeah.
Because you would need to go to both at one time.
You
And
potentially.
then if they're both serving in the same capacity, then you would be limited a remedy.
because the zoning board is also the sign board of appeals. So I'm sure if they could have combined them, they would have. It would have been zoning, sign, and construction.
All right,
But
I'll read the statute as well. I'm suggesting, I'm gonna think that we just, unless, just appoint 3 trustees and call it a day.
I would appreciate
And if someone
that.
wants to join it later, we could either swap out trustees and keep it at 3, or just add to it and go up to the 5 or 6 that you're allowed.
I think the last person who joined construction was, Albert Ludwig. And I'm gonna say about 2 years ago.
And he's a planning commissioner now, so. All right, I'll figure that one out. That was it. No more pathways, no more diversity. That was everything covered. We'll deal with our president pro tem at our next meeting.
Yep.
Joint Senior Services Committee, to me, that's no different than next. So, next item on our agenda is consider the 2025 meeting dates. I don't know if it was Dana or Meg or
Dana.
Susan who went through there and pointed out the conflicts.
That was Dana for us. So tonight we're just considering it. We're bringing it to you to go ahead and look at, have some discussion. Obviously, we're not going to vote in and approve it until our December meeting, but I would like to get this approved at our December meeting. So we start our new year and nobody's wondering, we're fresh here.
So for council and the indigenous people conflict, I think we had that already this year. That seems like, if anything, an opportunity like we did with veterans is use that as an opportunity to make a statement about our Native Americans. So I think we keep that date. I don't want to speak for all Jews, but I wouldn't put Simchat Torah high enough on the list to cancel or readjust a planning meeting. I mean, it's a bigger Jewish holiday, but I don't think it would be worth canceling a meeting. The 2 meetings, the one conflict for the historic district and the one for the ZBA, those I think should be considered, but how typically do we do that? Do
Yeah.
we make those decisions for them, or did we let them?
We make those decisions for them. And so, since we're talking about meetings, I'd like to talk about the January schedule. Even in the past, we've gone where we've canceled some January meetings, not all of them, all the January meetings. It's just dependent on holidays and where we're lining up on holidays as far as staff and getting agendas prepared and moved out. Like this HDC meeting, even moving it to the 8th is going to be very difficult for staff to be able to get that agenda done and put out timely. I mean, we run into it because we have the legal committee meeting the Monday before. That means that even our January council meeting is a really tight date there. And, you know, you have to think about leading up into Christmas. I have 3 staff members and they all need to take a couple of days around Christmas. So it makes it really difficult for us to, you know, keep the same timeline and prepare agendas. So I'm not sure what council's view is on that. I've looked historically,
Are you
we've
talking
done
about the
a bunch
January
of things.
8th meeting for
January.
HDC?
Yeah, and even the 13th for our village council is gonna be difficult knowing where planning commission, or where the legal meeting is gonna fall.
can we change the legal committee meeting? Because I'd like to have a January meeting. I think that
Well-
once a month is.
Right, but couldn't the alternative be that we move it to the Monday
Monday?
following, the 20th?
Yeah.
Martin Luther King Day,
Oh, it is.
yeah.
Oh, the 23rd.
I think we've moved it to a Tuesday before, right? We had a meeting on a Tuesday.
So it sounds like there's a cluster of meetings that are potentially subject to some changes. You should just probably take them one at a time.
Agreed, and maybe this is
So-
something we chew on too and come back.
Well, so what are you proposing, Meg, are you proposing that, because we have legal the week before the regular council meeting, so Legal would be on the 6th of January, council would be on the 13th. Does-
8th.
I'm, oh, s-
No, this is
January.
January.
Um,
Are we on this, are we on the same page?
We're
Yeah,
talking
we're-
about council.
yep.
Council, yeah.
And I would have suggested moving it to the 20th, but that's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so, I mean, I think that if we're going to keep the 13th for January, we need to be really cognizant of what's on that agenda, and we
Yeah.
know going in that it's gonna be a very light agenda intentionally, so that we have time to prepare and get it
Yeah,
ready to go.
that makes sense.
But that I'm okay with. I think that the HDC meeting here on the 8th needs to be canceled or rescheduled. Those don't always run. It depends what's on the agenda.
On HDC?
Yep, and if there's nothing on the agenda, it doesn't run, and there's less on the agendas in the winter months. But I think it might make sense to move that meeting.
They could meet on the 15th.
Yeah, what if we moved that out by a week to the 15th? I think that would help us.
That won't work.
Because 50.
Oh, that's planning,
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
But again, are we able to move it to a Tuesday, so you would have, I mean, that's a bit onerous on staff
Well-
to have back-to-back late nights.
I mean, doesn't historic only meet when there's something on the agenda?
It does.
So I would just plan on not having a January meeting.
I would.
And if there's an applicant that needs something done in January, then the HDC, Gary will have to create a way to come up with a,
Okay, let's
Schedule
go
a
ahead and
special
plan
meeting.
and just get rid of that January meeting
You could
unless
call
there's an
Gary and just
emergency.
see what he thinks is coming up, because a lot of times he does know a
It-
couple months in advance, and he can tell you.
That's a good, and we have a,
We have, it is dependent on whether or not we have applicants.
yeah.
We don't know yet if we have any applicants for it.
Oh, understood. As the former liaison with the HTC,
Yep.
Gary has a pipeline that operates outside of the
Yes.
HDC, and just as a stopping off point, he
No.
may be a valuable contact for you.
I think that's a good feedback there too, and we can also talk to Bill Denon. Typically, we'll know what projects are going to come through and if we are or not. So as of right now, I'm gonna reach out to Gary and then remove the January 8th meeting. If there is some sort of big issue that would need to get heard in January, then we can address it at that time and put it back on the calendar here.
I don't want to put like an undue burden on the staff, so if the week of Martin Luther King Day is better for a council meeting, I think we could entertain that too. Because if the 13th is too tight a turnaround.
I appreciate that. I think that what my plan right now is for the council meeting on January 13th, we're gonna keep really light. Well, I'll just put on what we actually, is pertinent that we talk about that month specifically, and then that will allow us less time to prep the agenda, and then I think we can make the 13th work. Thank you, though. I appreciate that, because it is a lot for staff here. And then the 16th ZBA meeting, I mean, if that does meet or not.
We haven't met in like 4 months, right, since July?
We've only met 3 times this
Yeah.
year.
So,
And then what about this planning commission meeting, Dana, on the 15th?
Planning's always a go.
Yep, yeah, and honestly, I can already think of things that will be on a January meeting, so I think we need to keep that.
okay? So what are your thoughts on conflicts with Ash Wednesday? On Ash Wednesday, most people go to church in the daytime though, right?
Unless you're working, then you go at night.
I think that we just have to make like a standardized policy that we just run it, or we do federal holidays, and like, that way it's cut
I
and
would
dry.
stick with federal holidays and not
Yeah.
get
you
down
can come
to
with your ashes.
the religious path, so that one's not an issue. And then, in the ZBA, if that was a council meeting, I would be more concerned on Juneteenth. You could easily just cancel that
I think
one.
we should cancel that
Yeah.
one, because if we're gonna do federal holidays,
Yeah.
Juneteenth is recognized.
So, yeah, I would just cancel that.
Yep.
But
I
so is
agree.
Indigenous Peoples' Day is a
Yeah.
federal holiday.
Yes, yep, that's true.
And so is Veterans Day. So like that's where if,
Well, no, we're not basing it on the fact that it's, I don't think because it's a federal holiday. I think we've based it more on respect to the holiday itself.
Well,
We made.
but then that means you're giving a
yeah,
kind of respect
again, I'm
to-
fine with just saying ZBA, happy to cancel it, probably wouldn't meet anyways. Whereas, like, I think that we do need to set a bright line threshold to say federal holiday or not, that, otherwise we're trying to balance and value a federal holiday, which gets into murky water.
Because David, what if the next president doesn't respect Juneteenth as you do? And then they decide to hold meetings on Juneteenth?
So it's just like, I just think, again, from a policy standpoint,
It's true. You can't depend on people's personal.
So.
So I'm
what are we
gonna
saying?
remove the Juneteenth. I
Yeah.
think we're in agreement there regardless. ZBA doesn't need to meet in that June meeting. I'm gonna remove that. I am going to remove the HDC January meeting unless there is something very pertinent otherwise. And we're gonna keep our village council proposed for January 13th, and we're gonna keep our planning proposed for January 15th.
yep.
Okay, so we will have an updated schedule for you in your next agenda packets to go ahead and take a vote
Sorry,
on.
we missed
Yep.
one.
Yep.
Wastewater Management Board, we can cancel that for the 13th?
Oh, that's an excellent point. I'm gonna cancel that for January then.
Okay.
Do we even meet this year?
Well, with wastewater, isn't that the council? And
council.
we have a meeting for
Ah.
15 minutes before the council meeting? Because there's very little business typically?
Okay, yes, that lines up, yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we'll keep it and we'll do it just like how we
Yeah.
have in the past, a quick one
It's
right
a
before.
nothing meeting, yeah.
Great point, yep, okay. All right, so we will be coming back to you with a list of appointments to go ahead and vote in. We're gonna get a president, pro temp, voted on next time, and we're gonna have an updated schedule for you to take some action on there. And then some just other follow-up that I have. Thank you, I appreciate everybody coming in today and spending the time to kind of get this organized, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
So real quick, just for my own organization, Dana, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of the things that you all did wonderfully preparing as far as the structure of our government and put them into the charter tab, just leave that in there.
Yeah.
That way I have it.
Once it's in the back, look, that's yours.
Yep, perfect, awesome, thank you so much.
Oh, we give these back to you?
Yeah, every
Yeah, we
meeting.
fill them
So you
for
pull
and
out
then
whatever you
deliver
want
them.
out of it.
So every time we bring before council, we will get a package delivered, and it's gonna be in your binder.
Yeah, I was clearing off a shelf. I thought I was getting one of these for every meeting.
No, you gotta.
Budget amendment.
We recycle.
Yeah.
Staples.
Sorry, what?
We're a recycling organization.
Yeah,
So do we do that? Do we reorganize it?
no, I'm doing it right now.
You can normally just drop it off, and anything that's left in there that you didn't take out, Dana will go ahead and clear out. Anything you keep in your back tabs
Right.
is yours to keep. So if there's something you're gonna wanna reference at other meetings, go ahead and pull it out and stick it in the back of your book. But you are not responsible for clearing it out, just make sure that what you want out of there is gone, cause we'll clean them out and restock them for every meeting.
Awesome, thank you.
I use this part, like, we have drain meetings, and it's, some things just go on. And I just said, please keep,
Yep.
because that's a work plan issue.
Can I
Yeah.
take these home though?
Yeah,
that's what they
absolutely,
said,
that's all
just take-
yours.
Return it back, or whatever you wanna keep, but I'm gonna take mine
So,
home and drop it off.
The charter stays in here, so if I mark it up,
Correct, that would
Okay.
be your copy, and we would keep that in the back there.
okay.
And if there was,
I won't take that out. Anything with the open media and the charter, all of this stuff stays in there. I only bother with the front of it when you have your, minutes, your agenda, new business.
Yeah,
old business,
okay.
everything like that.
all right, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter.